Today we speak with a 5G worker who actually installs 5G networks, and we get to ask him, does 5G cause coronavirus? What about some of the other things that's claimed about 5G? There are some legitimate concerns here, but most of what you heard is not actually the case. So we're going to talk about that and so much more on today's Into the Multiverse.
Wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Hello, everybody. Hope you are doing well. Glad to be speaking with you again today. For those who aren't on social media much, then you might not have noticed the recent claim that 5G is causing coronavirus. This conspiracy theory has been going around on social media like crazy, like wildfire. This thing has been spreading, and a lot of people have their own articles, their own theories about it, and they're sharing those. But is any of this actually substantiated? I haven't really spoken too much about it because I wanted to wait and see what information was going to come out about 5G, especially with this claim that it has anything to do with coronavirus. I wanted to make sure that I did my own research and looked into what is the most likely scenario based on the evidence and not just based on my feelings about it. So while it might seem I'm a little late to the game on this, the reason is because I wanted to make sure I had any clue what I was talking about. And so I want to look at an article today that actually debunks this viral video that went around claiming that 5G causes coronavirus. And then I want to show you an interview that I did with somebody who actually installs 5Gs in people's homes. And he works in this stuff all the time. He's around it all the time. And spoiler alert, he is completely healthy. So we have to talk about that because, again, this thing has been spread around so much, and it's really important that we do our own research and know what we're talking about, because it does seem like there are actual legitimate concerns with 5G, but it's just not the things that most people are talking about. The things that most people are talking about is what's going to be used to throw all of us in the same barrel of crazy conspiracy theory, and it's going to make sure that the regulations that need to be done on 5G won't be done because we're looking at the wrong thing. So we're going to talk about all that. The first thing that I want to talk about, again, this article, viral video claiming 5G causes pandemic easily debunked. Now, when I first shared this article, a couple people said, "Well, you can't trust CBC. They're biased or whatever." All right, I get that, but this article actually does cite its sources, and you can look into the sources. I can't speak for CBC in total, but at least on this article, they cite all their sources, and you can go and look and see that they're right. They are right. So let's see what it says. Video spreads false claims linking technology to coronavirus. A video has gone viral with the claim that coronavirus was caused by 5G technology has been debunked by virologists. So if you're not familiar with the story, it gives you some background on it. It says, a viral video by an American doctor who is on disciplinary probation claims that the coronavirus pandemic was caused by 5G technology. However, it contains many false claims and inaccuracies that are easily debunked by virologists. And I'll add even just some basic understanding of history, which they do get into. In the video, Dr. Thomas Cowan claims viruses are the waste from cells that are poisoned. Some of the poisoning, he says, comes from electromagnetic fields. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Skywatch TV, Sci Friday, Unraveling Revelation, that kind of stuff, Sharon K. Gilbert, she has a background in microbiology, and she talks about what viruses actually are. And it's not that they're waste. It's not that they're these made up things. It's not that viruses aren't real. That's another thing that has been going around online. But viruses are what they are, what they're claimed to be, and there's really no reason to expect or think otherwise. So at least no legitimate reason, nothing that anybody can actually point to. I mean, you can look at these things in a microscope. But anyway, continuing on. So that's what Dr. Cowan says, that these viruses are a waste from cells that are poisoned. Now, the original video was uploaded to YouTube on March 12th. It quickly went viral. It racked up 16,000 shares and 390,000 views within a week. More copies of the video exist, some with translations in different languages. At least 5 other YouTube users have uploaded it to their channels. And the video has also been uploaded by more than a dozen Facebook pages, as well as on Instagram and Twitter. It was notably shared on Instagram by American singer Carrie Hilson to her 2.3 million followers. But after it sparked controversy, she deleted her post. And there's several examples here, as you can see. So it says it's impossible to measure how many shares and views the video garnered in total, but has been viewed by at least several hundreds of thousands of people. So debunking the claims. So in the video, Cowan claims that viruses are simply the byproduct of a cell that has been poisoned. Now, one of Canada's top virologists says that isn't so. So he says, this is Jason Kindrachuk, a virologist at Canada Research Chair in Emerging Viruses at the University of Manitoba. And by the way, they didn't just get some random person. I mean, that's usually what the crazy conspiracy theorists will do. They'll get just some random doctor or somebody with a DR in front of their name that happens to be willing to say what they agree with, go along with the conspiracy, and they'll put him on. But this is just what virologists do. They work with this stuff all the time, every day. So unless they're all lying, and I don't see how something like that would be possible. To what end? What would be the reason? They would all, because they work with this every day, they would have to all be lying about it. They would all have to be in on the scheme, and that means anybody that studies to be a virologist, that would mean that they would all have to be initiated into this grand lie. And do you think every 100% of people are going to go along with that? Obviously not. So if that was the case, this would have been exposed a long time ago, and it would have been mainstream because there would have been more virologists to back it up. But that's just not the case. So this isn't just some random person. This is an actual top virologist, one of Canada's top, and he says, quote, "Viruses are not just debris. Viruses don't just get created as a way to deal with poison." End quote, I believe. Yeah, end quote. So viruses, as he says, are small pieces of genetic material surrounded by a protein coat. So he says, quote, "The virus basically is essentially inert until it basically binds specifically to certain types of cells. Once it gets inside of our cell, it releases its genomic material, and then it uses basically our host cell machinery to create more and more and more copies of itself," end quote. So, as proof that the cause of the global pandemic is not debris, Kindrachuk points to various scientific investigations into the coronavirus, including the fact researchers that have been able to take it apart physically and put the virus sequence back together and use it to infect primates. So he says, quote, "We've been able to put that virus into rhesus macaques, which are a non-human primate and are very similar to humans in terms of how they respond to many different pathogens and illnesses. Those animals get sick with something that looks kind of like mild COVID-19, so I think the data is so overwhelmingly valid." End quote. Kindrachuk also said that he has seen variations of the theory that 5G causes illnesses emerge long before the COVID-19 outbreak. So he says, quote, "It's actually been something that the anti-vax community has used fairly frequently as part of their argument against vaccination." I'm gonna just pause right there. End quote. I'm just gonna pause right there. This is why I'm doing this video, by the way. Do you see how they lump everybody together? So they'll take people who have a really extreme conspiracy theory, and then they'll lump in other things like anti-vaccine people. Now me, I'm not in favor of vaccines. I mean, there are people that would label me an anti-vaxxer. Yet I don't believe that coronavirus was caused by 5G. Frankly, I think that's ridiculous. But this kind of thing, these extreme conspiracy theories, it allows people like this to throw us all into the same group and say we're all crazy, which is only hurting all of us. We're only hurting ourselves by spreading around this stuff, this misinformation, without doing our own homework, without doing our own research. And I don't mean doing research like just watching a YouTube video or just reading one random article. I mean actually looking into citations, looking into the history, looking into how these people got these facts, like really looking into it and seeing if they're true or not. But what most people will do is they'll read an article, or they'll read a headline of an article, they'll share that around, and then the conspiracy starts growing from there. The conspiracy theory starts growing from there without anybody able to actually explain what 5G even is. Again, we have somebody who's going to explain to you what 5G really is. He works in this and he explains it beautifully. It makes a lot of sense. So that's the worry here. And that's the real point of this video is like, look, if there's things that you really believe in, don't taint all of that with this kind of insane, just out there conspiracy stuff. It's only going to hurt your cause. There are things to be concerned about with 5G. This is not one of them. So if this is the thing that you're spreading around, all it does is allow other people, some people in power even, some experts, it allows them to throw all of us in the same group, and it gives them an excuse to not listen to anything we have to say, because we're all seen as children, really, as just uninformed, ignorant people. That's how we're all seen by them, because we're not providing any real arguments. We're sharing around just articles or videos that don't cite any sources, and they don't actually have anything really scientific in them. They don't have any real reasons to believe anything that the person who's in the video or who's writing the article actually says. They don't provide sources. So this article actually does provide sources. You can click on all of this stuff, and I mean, there's various links, and you can click on all of it. They have experts talking about it, and there's actual real sources. And debunking this stuff, even, they take claims that are made, and they show how they're not true. That is going to allow everybody to not take any of this seriously. They're going to say, oh, you're just one of those conspiracy people. And so all of these causes that we're trying to raise awareness about, all of them are deemed illegitimate. So that's what spreading this stuff around actually does when you don't know what you're talking about. So it's really important that you don't just share something because it looks intriguing, or because it interests you, or even if you're dead convinced that it's real. You need to have an actual reason for that before you share it. And if you're not interested enough in it to actually get down and learn the science and understand what's actually happening, if you don't have that much interest in it, then you don't have any business sharing this stuff in the first place. There's a lot of things I don't have a deep interest in, and I just don't share about. There's nothing wrong with that. You're gonna have interest in some things and not so much in others. So we can't just be sharing everything around like this without doing our due diligence to research it and see if it's even true. There's so much misinformation out there. But I wanted you to notice what this virologist is doing here. He's throwing even the anti-vax community in with this anti-5G thing, and they're labeling it all as, well, those are just the people that think that coronavirus was started by 5G. Those are the people that are burning down, committing arson against 5G towers. Those guys, they're illegitimate. They're not even worth listening to. That's what they're going to do. So you're hurting your own cause. You're hurting your own cause by doing this. And that's why I think most people don't really take this seriously, because they don't care enough about the cause. They care about their own pride, their own ego. They want to share this around so they can prove to their friends how woke they are, how much smarter they are than everybody else, how enlightened they are. They don't care about the cause. They care about their own ego. And those are the people that are going to get angry at a video like this that I'm doing right now. And they're going to claim that I'm a shill, or that I'm any number of names. They're going to claim that because what I'm doing right now, giving the right information here, giving proper information in the right way, I'm bruising their ego. I'm hurting their ego. I'm hurting their pride. And they get mad at that. So I'm sure if you look in the comment section, you're probably going to see a ton of comments like that. That is why. It's because they don't care about the cause. They don't care about 5G and the actual dangers of it. They care more about their own pet theory. They care more about their own ego, and they want to use you to inflate it. So my whole thing is, I say, don't let them. Starve them out. There's no reason to share stuff that these people are sharing around, or that they share things that they talk about, because it's only to inflate their own ego. All right, continuing on. So the quote continues, quote, "So I'm not surprised. I'm disenchanted by the fact that even during a pandemic and a global health crisis that this stuff keeps resurfacing," end quote. Many other claims made by Cohen in the video don't hold up to scrutiny. For example, he said the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic coincided with the worldwide introduction of radio, proving that radio waves caused the outbreak. However, the first commercial radio station, XWA, from Montreal started broadcasting in 1920. And there, again, they provide a link. He also claims that the Boston Health Department tried to experiment with the 1918 flu by purposefully infecting healthy people with the mucus of infected patients, and that the result was that the healthy people didn't get sick. There's no proof this ever happened. The only mentions of this story we found on the internet were either on Cowan's site or on forums mentioning Cowan's newsletter. Indeed, health authorities at the time in Boston and elsewhere were quite aware that the outbreak was caused by a virus that could easily spread. For example, authorities in Boston asked women who were dating sailors, one of the first groups to introduce the outbreak to the U.S. mainland, not to kiss them as to not catch the disease. There's a picture here. Nurses care for victims of a Spanish influenza epidemic during an outdoor fresh air cure in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1918. Says the Boston Health Department was even lauded in 1990 as the American Journal of Public Health for using open-air hospitals to slow down the spread of the 1918 virus. According to a review of public health records, the journal found that a combination of fresh air, sunlight, scrupulous standards of hygiene, and reusable face masks appears to have substantially reduced deaths among some patients and infections among medical staff. Cowan claims that Wuhan, the location where COVID-19 outbreak began, was the first city to be covered by 5G. He insists that this is proof that these two things are linked. However, cities in South Korea and the U.S. had 5G networks before Wuhan did. Also of note, Iran, one of the worst hotspots for COVID-19, does not have a 5G network, alongside other countries like Japan and Malaysia, also hit hard by the pandemic. So then it goes on, who is the man in the video? Cohen is a American holistic medical practitioner who trained as a physician. That's another thing. I'm big into holistic health. I'm really big into that. But there is a lot of misinformation in there. There's a lot of things that people will claim that just aren't true. And because of that, it's hard to find a good source, because somebody will call themselves a holistic medical practitioner, but really they're just some conspiracy theorist who believes all sorts of nonsensical things. And then it gives every other real holistic medical practitioner a bad name. It gives them all a bad name. So, for example, Skywatch TV, we are very much into holistic health. I've benefited greatly from it, and we started Eden's Essentials. Now, that's a legitimate company that provides legitimate supplements and things that can really help your health, and there's legitimate science behind it, and all sorts of things. It's extremely professional, but people like this, who call themselves holistic medical practitioners and then say all these crazy things, it gives everybody else a bad name who's actually trying to do good. So now it gives doctors, and it gives other science, professional science leaders, whatever. It gives them an excuse to say all holistic health is garbage. It gives them an excuse to say that, and then they'll point to things like this guy. They'll point to people like this guy and say, well, look at this guy. He said that 5G caused coronavirus. You're going to tell me that holistic health has any legitimacy? So to share this stuff, everything that you believe in, it's only hurting all of that. That's why we have to be so careful what we share. We can't just share everything because it sounds interesting. So it says he's currently operating on probation with the medical board in California and has limits on his practice after a 2017 complaint to the state medical board that, among other things, he had offered an unlicensed drug to a breast cancer patient without informing her it wasn't approved for use. He also never saw the patient in person, nor did he review the full medical file according to documents. And okay, so all of this stuff you can if you want, you can look on the website to get the rest of it. There's just a little bit about him, and with stuff like this, with claims like this, the probation and cancer patients, there's two sides to every story, and I don't know what his side is. So I mean that to me isn't even really relevant to this discussion, because again, I don't even think people really have to go after the source of information when they can just deal with the information itself. So, for example, like, you don't even have to show that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Just what does he claim, and then debunk what he claims, which this has. So there's no real evidence that 5G is doing this to people and is causing coronavirus. In fact, there's a lot of evidence on the contrary. Again, it says even in Iran or Iraq or whatever it said, Iran, I believe, that got hit really hard with coronavirus that doesn't have 5G available. And so you see that. Now, because I really want, I don't work in 5G. I've never installed a wireless router, or, I've never done anything like that. And because I'm not an expert in that field, I wanted to find an expert. I wanted to go to an expert who actually installs these things. So I had the pleasure of interviewing Aaron Sampson. He's going to introduce himself in the interview. But he works with 5G every day. He installs this stuff, and he is totally healthy. And he actually explains how 5G works, what it is, and the actual legitimate concerns with 5G. There are ways that 5G can be abused. There are ways that it can even be harmful, but it's just not the ways that most people are talking about. People want to talk about 5G causing coronavirus, and then they're ignoring the legitimate concerns. And all that's going to do is ensure that 5G gets rolled out even faster without proper regulations, and that those dangers that are real will be fully realized. So I wanted to talk to an actual expert in this field. Here it is. Here's my interview with Aaron Sampson. Watch this. Aaron Sampson, my good friend, how are you doing today?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm really thankful that you made time to do this. I know this was kind of last minute for those at home that are watching. I literally just messaged you about 10 minutes ago and said, "Hey, can you come on the show?" And you were available. So thank you for coming on the show.
Sure, not a problem.
All right, so for those not familiar, can you work with 5G all the time? There's this big conspiracy theory about how 5G is causing the coronavirus, but you work around this stuff all the time and you're not sick. So can you tell us about your job, about about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm not climbing the actual tower itself, but I've been in this field for since 1999, so about 21 years. I've been working in television, when it was just screwed into the back of the TV, and started doing internet service and broadcasting, service inside of a home. And then we've progressed into a fiber backbone. So my association with this, I've always tried to follow the technology, because if you get stuck into a part of the technology where it becomes obsolete, you don't have a job.
Right.
So the next phase that I saw coming was this 5G technology. And so I've tried to keep up with it, because I had a lot of people in the same field or that I worked with that moved on to working for other companies, actually installing small cells, installing actually climbing up the towers and putting this other equipment in. So I do have a lot of people who are right in the, in the midst of everything, dealing with all of this stuff. So, but yeah, my end of it, the way that I like to talk about it is there are seven technologies involved with 5G. It's a lot of people the misconception is that 5G is just they're turning on some wavelength somewhere and it's going to fry everybody. And there's actually 7 different technologies that are incorporated in 5G, and I am involved in 2 of those that are kind of like the backbone structure. So that's where I'm at currently.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I've been kind of following this 5G stuff for the past year or a couple of years. I haven't really drilled down into the science of it, but I've been interested on both sides of this. For a long time, I was really kind of apprehensive about 5G for the same reason that a lot of people are. You just read things online and then you just kind of assume they're true or there's some kind of truth to it without really delving into it. But the more that I look into it, the more that it seems a lot of the claims that are made, especially this most recent one about it causing coronavirus, are really unfounded, and they're more of like a misunderstanding of the science behind it. Like what you just said, that it's actually 7 different technologies going on here. I didn't even know that, and you're involved with 2 of them. Now, somebody might hear that and they might say, well, he's only involved with 2 of them, so he's not getting full exposure. No wonder he's not sick. But is that how it would even work?
Well, yes and no. So some of the stuff that I do, which would be in-home Wi-Fi, it runs in a portion of a millimeter spectrum. So the 5G that you get when your cable company comes in and puts your Wi-Fi in is different than the 5G technology that's coming off of a cellular tower. But they function and work in the same spectrum. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand is the electromagnetic field, the spectrum of the electromagnetic field is everything from static electricity all the way to gamma radiation. And it incorporates UV light. So the light that you see with your eyes is incorporated in this spectrum. And then it's divided by 2 different types of spectrum, which is non-ionizing radiation and radiation. And that the dividing line between that is the visible light range. So when we see all of this technology, everything from the EMF put off by power poles in your backyard or these big, massive, power lines to your microwave in your house, all fall under non-ionizing radiation. And that incorporates 1st gen through 5th gen cell phone technology. When you get to the light spectrum and you get on the other side, then you start seeing ultraviolet radiation, which, if you remember back in the 80s, 90s, it was always about putting sunscreen on or it was going to cause cancer. That's because it's in the ionized radiation side of the spectrum. And so that is where we start getting into serious danger from that spectrum on, is where you get into radiation and gamma radiation from X-rays, from, nuclear, materials, things like that can literally rip atoms apart. So on the non-ionizing side is the greatest threat is heat. It just creates a massive amounts of heat. This is why your microwave works, is because it's directed energy inside of basically a Faraday cage that heats up the materials. So there are dangers across all of the spectrum of the electromagnetic field. And that's something that the government has shown that they can weaponize all of the parts of the spectrum. So there are dangers and potential dangers for any time you have high exposure, the amount of power put behind anything in that spectrum, and the frequency in which you are being exposed to it. So the amount of time you're being exposed to it. So there are dangers across the board, and it just depends on where you're at. So in proximity wise, the reason why in my original post I had said, I was just trying to kind of broad swipe everything and say, hey, look, I'm exposed to this no different than everybody else is, plus I'm in people's homes every day, without masks, without gloves, without all this kind of stuff. They literally, it's like we have hand sanitizer and soap and a can of Lysol. That's what I have. So, and I'm not getting sick from all of this. And I am exposed to a form of millimeter bandwidth technology within feet every single day. So now it's not like climbing up a cell tower and facing the amount of directed energy that is coming out of those. But on the same aspect, I have lots of friends who work in that industry and none of them are walking around with coronavirus. So you can also, I guess the biggest thing that I've been seeing, that the correlation is, people are seeing the rollout maps for 5G on top of the map of where the hotspots, the hotbed for coronavirus is. And I'm trying to tell people correlation does not equal causation. And just because it rolls, it looks the same. So when you look at the infrastructure and the backbone and the amount of tech that has been tested and rolled out and all these things, you're talking billions and billions of dollars from these telecommunications companies, and they're not doing it for rural Utah. They're going to spend that money to put it in major cities because they're going to get more bang for their buck. So the reason why you see it in these areas is because that's where the most people are congregated. That's also why you see a virus spread in the same areas, because that's where everybody's at. So that is one of the things. I've said the same thing. I've noticed that when the 50% of the major cases happened in 11 different counties when this first came out, and all of them tended to be liberal counties, and it's like, well, and in 3 or 4 different states, they were highly liberal states. It doesn't mean the causation, or the correlation does not mean that, it's just because they're liberal, that's why it's happening, or because they tend to be, they push very hard vaccinations in New York, in California, and in Washington State. They were pushing, legislation for vaccination. Just because it correlates with the same areas does not mean that that's the cause. So that's what I'm really trying to get people to understand, is that causation and correlation, like, they're not one and the same. Like, you can see a trend, but it does not mean that that is the purpose or the cause of what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting too is would it be reasonable, or would it be accurate to say that the general, like, the exposure that most people would be getting to 5G, that you have equal to, if not more, exposure to it than just most people just kind of out in the world who don't specifically work in that would? Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say, for where I'm at, as low bandwidth as it is, I am constantly, when I install these units inside of a home, I'm constantly, like, I'm on top of it the entire time.
Yeah.
So I would say, most people, unless you have your router like right next to your bed and you sleep next to it every night, I would have a higher concentration of it than most people inside of their homes, because I'm constantly around it and constantly activating them, getting them going. Again, like I said, it's not the same as a 5G tower, but it is still in a 5G spectrum. It is in a millimeter bandwidth spectrum. So when they say 5G in your Wi-Fi in your home, it's 5 gigahertz. It's falls in the 5 gigahertz spectrum inside of the electromagnetic field. When we're talking about cell signal currently, because people are saying there's a lot of, they're rolling out 5G. They're in the 24 and 28 megahertz spectrum is what they're currently running on. That's the 4G LTE. That is the spectrum that they were running on before. It hasn't changed. There's only a few cities, in Waco, Texas being one of them, that had rolled out actual 5G using a higher, what we call high band frequency. And that was, in the 30 to 80 gigahertz range. So they've been testing it in all of those ranges, because the higher the frequency, the more data can be shot out at one time. I think Ericsson, was just testing, and they were able to do like 400 gigabytes of data within 10 seconds. That's like downloading 5 4K movies in 10 seconds. Wow. So, the faster, the more bandwidth they can, or the further along the spectrum, the more bandwidth they can use, and the more data can be transferred at a quick amount of time. So that's kind of where we're seeing the technology going, because it has to. Yeah. With everybody that has all of these devices, things are going to progress, especially when you get into 8K. When your cameras are taking 8K film, you're videoing 8K, you're going to want to upload that to Facebook. The bandwidth usage is going to be it's going to be astronomical. And when you have 1,000 people that are trying to do this at the same time, you have one regular old 4G LTE tower, you're going to start seeing, EMS services affected. You're not going to be able to make phone calls. You're going to see outages, things like that, because of too much data being transferred at the same time. So this technology is going to get pushed whether we like it or not, unfortunately.
Well, it's amazing to think about too, because like you said, even though you're not specifically like on the towers, people who are, you have friends who are, you work with people who are, and they seem to be all fine. Just for them to be able to continue doing the job, they would have to be relatively healthy in order to do that. And so to me, when I hear something like that, it's like, breath of relief. Okay. Because it sort of reminds me of, like back in the 90s when they said cell phones caused brain cancer, and they would even show like x-rays of people with brain cancer that looked like, the phone antenna. And that turned out to be nothing. There was a lot of debunking that came out later, but at the time, a lot of people were afraid of that. It seems like every major, step in technology, there's this fear around it. And then there are these pieces of, so-called evidence, whether true or not, that are shown as truth, even though they might not be. And so, like you said, 5G is coming, whether we like it or not. And to me, it's like, well, if it's not harmful in the way that we've been hearing it is, then that's good news. That's a breath of relief. But I know that there are a lot of people that will listen to that and almost take offense to it, because they'll say, well, these guys are lying, or they don't know what they're talking about. They're being ignorant. this stuff is going to kill us all. It's going to give us cancer. It's causing coronavirus somehow. So what are your thoughts just about how kind of hysterical people can get, or how, because on one hand, I see it on one hand where it's like, okay, it's good to look into things and, we want to be safe. But when well, let me start with this before getting to like how you personally feel about it. Have you, in your experience in working with this stuff all the time, have you seen any cause for concern, just in your personal experience working with this? Have you ever seen anybody, just suddenly get cancer that seems like it could be, caused by something working with 5G? Or has there been anything even remotely close to that in your line of work?
So not directly in my line of work. I mean, there are dangers in what I do, but they tend to be more about, climbing on poles and stuff like that.
Right.
But I do have some friends who have talked to me and had experiences where they were working on a cellular tower, whether it was second or third generation cell tower, first gen. There is a lot of heat and stuff that's generated from those towers. So they do have to, I mean, if you ever get the chance to look at one of these, or the back side of one of them, there's warning labels all over the place about high EMF fields, about the dangers of heat. But I had a friend of mine who was telling me about it. He was, climbing a tower, and he slipped one day, and he put his hand in front of one of the just to grab himself, and it nuked basically the tips of his fingertips. And to this day, 10 years later, he has yellow tips of his fingertips on that hand because it did cellular damage. Because nobody's really supposed to be that close. That's the whole reason why they put them up as high as they do, is that it's not supposed to have the same effect as if you were like right in front of it at ground level. Not to say there aren't dangers, but looking at, so cell phones 40 years ago were unheard of.
Right.
We started getting them in the 80s. And, of course, the fear came out about what is the damage that this is going to do. And you can see in just medical history, looking at instances of brain cancer. So in the early 80s, there were like 0 people that had cell phones. There may be a handful of them. But 40 years later, where we're looking at it, every single person on the face of this earth, for the most part, in first world countries, has a cell phone. And have we seen an increase in brain cancer drastically? It's actually not there. It's been plateaued for the last 40 years. So you would see, I mean, if we're talking about, correlation equals causation, if you were trying to see, this is an instance where you don't see correlation. So how can you say it has causation?
Right.
Because as the amount of people progressed and got cell phone technology, you should see a steady incline drastically, especially over 40 years. The increase in technology, you should see an increase in brain cancers, for instance. Now, like I said, there are dangers to any type of this frequency. And that's one of the things that I've been talking about, is if we're going to concentrate and talk about the dangers of this, we need to talk specifically about scientific truths that are linked to this, not that it causes COVID because somebody on Facebook said so. Because that's my thing. I mean, if people want to battle this, if people are worried or concerned about, a MIMO tower being put up in, their schoolyard, and they go to their city council and they start saying, well, so-and-so on Facebook said, that it caused COVID-19, they're going to laugh you out of that, that room, right? Nobody's going to take you seriously. So, I mean, there are legitimate concerns, and rightfully so, because these are extreme frequencies that our bodies were not naturally created to deal with. These are man-made technologies that have utilized, a spectrum that's already in existence, but now we're reproducing it in levels that most people would have never seen any other time in history. So, there are potential dangers, and it just depends on like I said, the amount of power that's being pushed behind whatever it is, the exposure level, and, how close you are to it, and, the frequency and amount. So that's why I do have concerns about some of the different tech, like, 2 of the other 7 that are talked about is what's called microcell technology, which is where they're going to reproduce this 5G signal off of multiple poles throughout, like, say, a neighborhood or a town. The bad thing about 5G is it does not go very far. The millimeter bandwidth does not travel very far. I mean, when they were testing, it only goes about 2 blocks before the phone starts dropping out. So to combat that, they have to put these microcells all over the place. To basically reproduce this signal. So that's one of them that is a concern, because now you're talking about upping the amount of this, signal, this EMF, this frequency that's out there, and it's going to be more exposure all the time. So that is one concern, and I think it needs to really be tested and sought out. The other concern is a technology that hasn't been fully rolled out yet, which is called beamforming. And beamforming is currently the way that the signal radiates. It's basically like a light bulb. Like when you turn a light bulb on, the light kind of fills the whole room. Well, that's how Wi-Fi works currently. It just radiates the signal, and whatever device it hits, it picks that data up. What they're moving towards is what's called beamforming, and that's more like a flashlight, where it's directed energy at your device or you. So when you're talking about, walking by these microcell towers or small cell towers, it's going to geolocate you, pinpoint you as you walk in between 3 or 2 of these towers. It's going to know right where you're at real time, and then it's going to shoot this data directly at your device in this beam type. So when we're talking about radiation, and we're instead of just kind of getting this radiation as you're walking by, because it's kind of being irradiated out of these towers, now it's going to be shot directly at you. So these are some of the technologies that I think really need to be regulated and need to be investigated more. The only way that that's going to happen is if people actually know the science, actually know what they're talking about, instead of just throwing a meme out there or reposting a YouTube video.
Yeah, absolutely, because that gives the people in charge all of this stuff an excuse to just not listen to any of their concerns, and it allows them to put everybody who might be even the slightest bit have a little bit of concern about 5G. It allows them to put them all in this box of just crazy conspiracy weirdos, and allows them to just ignore us and roll out this stuff maybe faster than they should before proper testing is done. So let me the heat that you mentioned before that's generated off these things, where a guy that like burnt his fingertips, is that just heat, or is that radiation, or is there a difference between those two things?
So yeah, it's called non-ionizing radiation, and in that spectrum, non-ionizing radiation that's the side effect of it. It causes heat, and the more power you put behind it, the more heat it generates. So in low frequencies, you're not going to see you go to put your hand next to your Wi-Fi router, you're not going to feel heat off of it. But like I said, if you go in front of a tower or one of these 5G MIMO towers, and you're putting your hands in front of those things, and there's all this data transfer, you're going to feel it. And we see this represented in government technology that they had rolled out in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it was a crowd control. It was called active denial system. And basically what it would do is it took radio waves in what we're talking about in this millimeter frequency, high powered with a lot of juice behind it. And they were able to shoot it at a crowd of people. And what it would do is it would cause them to disperse, because they would feel really uncomfortably hot. Their skin would feel really hot. And that was because, that is what happens when you take a frequency like this in the non-ionizing spectrum and you boost up the power to it. So it can be weaponized. All of this can be. The government also uses laser technology to shoot missiles out of the sky and planes out of the sky with high-powered lasers. Again, it's how much power is put behind it. So yeah, they can weaponize every part of this spectrum, and there is legitimate science behind that, and that is something that I think people need to understand versus like what we're talking about with COVID-19.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So with any dangers that might come from 5G, and it looks like there is cause for concern in potential areas, would we see those types of concerns in 4G? Like how much different is 4G than 5G? Because it would seem to me if 5G was like like the crazy stuff that people are saying, like so bad that it's actually causing viral diseases and stuff like that. Wouldn't we see something maybe on a smaller scale, but wouldn't we still see something from the 5G or the 4G that we have now? So how much different is 4G from 5G, and do the concerns that exist in 5G do they exist in 4G as well?
So yeah, currently, so again, when we talk about 5G and 4G, we're talking about the generation of the tech.
Right.
And currently, 5G is running on the backbone system of the 4G LTE. So when it's broadcasting, they haven't really changed anything as far as that. They've changed what's called MIMO towers, which is a massive input, massive output towers. So what people are seeing up there is a sending and receiving unit that allows communication on a broader scale.
Okay.
Because it used to be that one little receiver would send and receive data, and it works like a walkie-talkie, where only one device can communicate to the receiver, and that receiver sends data back. Now, if you've got 2,000 people doing this, you can see how sometimes when you're driving around, your YouTube video, is stalling out because you have 500 other people that are trying to send data. Since the beginning of communication electronically, it does always work this way. One person talks, sends data, the next person talks back and sends it just like a walkie-talkie. Well, they're changing this. This is what the 5G technology is all encompassing. The MIMO system means that multiple people can send and receive data on the same spectrum. And that's the other part of this technology is imagine a train going down a train track. And that is you sending a text message to your Nana, right? So now she sends a text message back on the frequency spectrum that they're currently using, which is around 24 to 28 megahertz. Those waves they don't kind of overlap. The same travel path that's sent is the same way that it comes back. So only one of those can happen at a time. So if you imagine a train going down a track, another train coming at it, you can see there can be a problem. So now what they're doing is putting roundabouts, and this is what MIMO and this other parts of these technology is, where when the data is sending and receiving at the same time, they will bypass each other. And this is completely new technology. This is all part of the 5G. But the primary thing that people keep talking about is this millimeter bandwidth. And they've been using it. It was in 4G technology. That hasn't changed. Now they're trying to open up more parts of this spectrum, all the way up to the 80 gigahertz range. Now, the FCC and a UN body, I think it was called UTI or ITU, something like that, they regulate every single part of the spectrum. So if you're a ham operator or you work as a telecommunications company, they give you the spectrum that you're allowed to use. Mm-hmm. You pay for that part of the spectrum. So a telecommunications company is not willy-nilly going out and grabbing a part of the spectrum without somebody knowing about it, because the government does run each part of these, and they have a lot of essential services like EMS, traffic communication for airliners. They all run on certain spectrums, and the FCC regulates every single bit of that. And if you are, like when I worked in the cable industry, we would have RF leakage, which would affect planes flying over. And the FCC would fly over and do tests for this RF leakage. And if you were found to have too high of leakage that could cause, an air traffic control system to go down, we'd be fined millions of dollars. So this is highly regulated as far as the frequency used. So, I see a lot of people, saying some stuff that I don't know where they're getting this information from, because the 60 gigahertz frequency that I keep seeing people repeating is an unregistered. It's like not given to anybody right now. The government has locked it down. It doesn't, nobody's using it, and the telecommunications companies aren't using it either. So we are currently still running on what the 4G technology was previously. So I haven't seen any drastic changes because we're using the same stuff we were using 2 years ago. It's just the other technology they're trying to expand upon that to fill out this 5G or fifth generation technology.
Now, some people have concerns about tracking with this kind of technology, and I know this is something you've looked into as well. What's come up in what do you think about the tracking with this kind of thing?
So this is one of a couple of major concerns that I have with this. So currently, with this technology, let's say you commit a crime with your cell phone in hand, that your local police department is able to reach out to the telecommunications companies that are around you, and they can triangulate your location within a couple of blocks, and then say, hey, this person was close enough that we can, go do an arrest warrant and whatever. So with this new technology, with small set technology, and as frequent as these things are going to pop up and be around, the tracking is going to be in real time, so they can keep an eye on you wherever you go, and it will be able to geolocate you to within inches. So this upgrade in this technology, for one, that is a serious concern. Another is privacy. When we're talking real time with the data being able to transmit as fast and as frequent as it's going to, privacy is going to be another issue. I mean, we know now that if you say something like, hey, I want to go to Home Depot and buy some lumber, right? On Facebook, it's going to give you an ad for some company that's going to sell you lumber, right?
Yep.
Now imagine this kind of stuff real time, where you're looking for something and you're talking about something, and then boom, you're getting instant notifications on your phone saying, hey, we noticed that you're at such and such location. Your closest store is right around the corner from you, and they've got a sale on exactly what you're looking for. So that is going to be another stage of this that we're going to see, which is privacy. And the final one that I have an issue with is, like I said, we were talking about earlier about the direct beam technology, with that being able to, instead of it like a radiated energy, it's going to be a direct beam shot directly at you. That is something else that I'm really concerned about. And this could tie into a lot of bigger and broader conspiracies, as well as end times stuff that, really see as technology progresses, and they have to move towards more devices are connecting to the internet. When right now your refrigerator, your trash can, your lights, your doorbell, everything are connecting to the internet. They want that to roll over onto you as well. I mean, you've got Elon Musk talking about brain mesh technology, and they want to combine the technology with human genetics, with biomech. And as that progresses, the only way that is going to happen is through 5G technology. There's no way that you could run this kind of system and be able to track people, to be able to monitor what they're doing, send them real-time data without this kind of network. So these are some major concerns that I have with this technology.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And with this, this heat that's generated, I wanted to get your take on this. I've been seeing articles all over the place saying that 5G towers are just exploding and catching on fire, and it's causing all these problems. But then other articles come out and say that that's actually due to arson, that these 5G kind of conspiracy theorists are setting these things on fire because they're really worried about 5G. What is your take on that? Could that heat that's generated actually start a fire? Or I'm sure there's got to be some type of thing put in place to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't know, some kind of cooling system. I don't know how it works, but is that something that could happen, or do you think that this is all arson?
Yeah, I mean, most of the cases I've seen are arson. People are getting a little bit out of hand. And like I said, there are legitimate concerns that people should have brought up or should be bringing up when this is being rolled out into their city or neighborhood. But going in after the fact and trying to set a tower on fire is not going to do any good. I mean, they're just going to ramp up security on it. You're going to be facing federal charges because, you are tampering with infrastructure that is federally regulated. So it's dangerous, not only for you, but it also could put EMS services out for a neighborhood or something like that, where somebody can't, die of a heart attack and they can't call 911. So I think that's dangerous to go down that line. Plus, I mean, just to think that these companies are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on this infrastructure, and that it's causing, like, say, COVID-19. How many people have died from that so far? 60,000 people. I mean, we can compare and look at a lot of other things that kill people far drastically, that are a lot cheaper than, the massive build out and infrastructure that it took to do 5G. But yeah, there are, like, as far as I understand, I mean, it radiates, it just like ionizes the air around it. So it's not like it's heating like a toaster oven. So it's just the after effect of non-ionizing radiation. For instance, when you stand out in front of the sun, you feel hot, right? Because there is non-ionizing radiation in that spectrum that will make your skin hot. It's the same thing, it's not that we're so close to the sun that the sun's going to melt us. It's just, that is the feeling that our skin gets from that non-ionizing radiation. So yeah, I don't know. People are doing a lot of crazy stuff lately,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I said, there is a lot of power. I'll say that goes into these things, not only just for the 5G. The 5G doesn't use as much power as, say, something like AM or AM bandwidth. It takes a lot of power to push the older technology, the second, third, and fourth generation technology, because it has to go further. So you'll see some big, trunk power cables that are running up to there, which is part of my concern. They're not utilizing all of the ability that thing could. So if somebody flips a switch somewhere or accidentally does something and you pump out that thing at full capacity, what kind of dangers can it be? And that may be what we have seen several times where birds have dropped out of the sky. Somebody did something wrong, they hit the wrong button, and then boom, it sends out heat all across. I don't know. That's so it would have to be something that somebody that works on that or wherever they're testing that from, that would be able to give a better example of that. But yeah, there are dangers for this. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important. I really appreciate your balanced approach to all this, because what it really comes down to is, if we're gonna try to make changes in some area, we need to actually make sure that we're providing truthful information about that specific thing, instead of using it for some other purpose that's kind of more personal. I mean, there are some people that will use these conspiracy theories really to just bolster their own ego and to show everybody else like how smart or how woke they are, that kind of thing. We see that a lot. So if somebody really wants to get a hold of just good, balanced information, especially on 5G, because a lot of people, and maybe this is a mistake too, but a lot of people, they don't trust the government enough, or they don't trust big corporations enough to be honest, which I think there's good reason to have some, to be skeptical about things that are said, because, I mean, if I'm running a company and I'm making a product, I'm going to try to tell everybody that the product is totally safe, and I'm going to shine it in the best light possible. That's what most companies would do. So I guess there would be room to be suspicious. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of misinformation, like we've talked about today, concerning all this, that people are buying into without really researching it and looking at the other side. So if people really want to get just good information, how would you suggest that they go about doing that in a way where they can at least be fairly confident that the information is truthful and not sensationalized?
Well, you actually have to do some digging. I mean, let's be honest. I put together an hour-long video and did it up on my Facebook, and it took some time to actually go through and find out all the information that I need. And you kind of have to take, both sides and realize, that some, there are companies and things like that aren't going to want to tell you certain things, right? Or the government or whatever. I understand that. But there are legitimate science that is out there that is testing these things. So you really kind of have to not throw the baby out with the bathwater on both instances and kind of look and see. But you're not going to get that just by, watching a YouTube video or, throwing a meme out there. You actually are going to have to go in and deep study into this. And there's plenty of information out there. I mean, you just Google search a lot of the things that I've talked about, like, the towers, the small cells, the MIMO towers. This information is available, and there are multiple sources. So you can kind of just go and try to dig into it yourself, but it's not doing any good by spreading around misinformation and disinformation. It's actually causing more problem, more panic, and people are burning towers down and stuff. I mean, you've got to do more than just be an armchair truther or an
Right.
armchair scientist. You're going to have to actually go in and actually do some study about this and figure out if it's how close are they putting it to your house? How frequently are they going to put these small cells up in your neighborhood? Like, you need to look into this kind of stuff, but not just become aware of this 5G danger and then start seeing cell towers that have probably been there for 10 years and say, oh my God, they put 5G up, in my backyard, So
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like your video would probably be a good place for people to start. Where can they see your video? And then you also host a show as well, or you're part of a show. Can you tell us about that as well?
Yeah, so I did this on my Facebook page just because I mean I have quite a few followers and I kept seeing the same stuff being regurgitated, and so I wanted to kind of just get the information out there. So it's on my personal Facebook page, but I also run a channel called Omega Chronicles TV. It's a fairly new channel. Because I started it, I started getting some stuff going, and then I got called to work with a friend of mine from the Holy Hand Grenade channel, Ian Chadrick, and we started doing what was called SITREP 2020. And we do everything, cover everything from what's going on in modern times to biblical studies. I mean, we talk about a lot of variety of topic, and it is what it is. A SITREP means it's a situation report. And for this year, we started out thinking it was going to be one thing, and then with everything that blew up and started acting, all crazy, it changed. So it's been awesome to do. But yeah, we've talked about a lot of these things, from COVID-19 to 5G to a lot of other conspiracies. Ian on his channel, The Holy Hand Grenade, has a ton of really good resources talking about conspiracy theories, the links between everything. I mean, it's great. It's a great resource if you really want to start digging in and not falling, trying to jump into a stack of needles, trying to find a needle. So, but yeah, those two channels are great. And then the video that I did, like I said, you can find on the Omega Chronicles TV talking about 5G.
Fantastic. Well, Aaron Sampson, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for providing, which is so rare to see anymore, providing a fair, just balanced explanation about what's really going on with this 5G stuff. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was informative. And yeah, there's just a lot to this stuff that we have to be careful with. It might seem interesting or even exciting to find a new theory or a new, behind the scenes, what's really going on kind of thing. But we have to be careful what we're sharing, because if you share something that isn't completely truthful, you can be participating in actually hurting people. Right now, the companies that are rolling out 5G, they have more reason to do it with less regulations now than they did before all the conspiracy stuff started. If we all would have just calmed down and actually looked at it rationally and in a rational way pointed out the actual concerns, just like Aaron just did in the interview, then we might actually have some reasons to put some regulations on this stuff or to demand more testing. But because we've gone so crazy with it, we've gone to the furthest edges of the fringe with it, it allows the companies and it allows the government to just say, those people don't know what they're talking about. They are all crazy. They think 5G started coronavirus. There's no reason to listen to their concerns. Let's just roll this out. And then, now that they have that bucket available, that people that shared this stuff created, now that they have that bucket available, they're able to throw all of us in that bucket, me and you included, even if we don't buy into the crazy conspiracy stuff, but we actually do have legitimate concerns, like me, like you, like Aaron. Because this has been done and we've allowed it to, there's been a lot of people that have shared these articles, and because we're not good at just waiting and doing our own research, then it's allowed this to happen. And now this is going to get rolled out a lot faster than it probably would have otherwise. It would have been better if people were just quiet about it, but it would have been even better if people did their own research and actually took time to understand the science. And some people might say, well, I don't have time, or I'm not interested in that. I don't have time. Then don't share articles about it. That's fine. You don't have to make time to do this. Then just don't be involved in it. Again, there are a lot of causes that I have my own personal beliefs about. There are things that I support and there are things I don't support, but I don't get involved. I just don't get involved if it's not something that is actually going to end up hurting the side that I'm on by me just spouting off about it when I don't know what I'm talking about. So if you believe that much in a cause that you want to get involved, you got to know what you're talking about. And Aaron gave some great reasons and gave you some resources that you can actually look at. So I highly encourage everybody to go check out Aaron's video. I will put the link in the description below so you can check it out there. It's a great place to start, but do your own research. If you're gonna share stuff, make sure you actually understand the science and help everybody out. Help everybody out by debunking the really crazy conspiracy stuff. And hopefully this video has helped you. I'm interested to see where this is going, but I do worry now. The more I see this unsubstantiated conspiracy, and I'm kind of a conspiracy guy myself, but this unsubstantiated conspiracy stuff, the more I see, I'm pessimistic about what the world looks like and what Christianity looks like now and in the near future. Until we start just growing up, basically, and doing proper research into this stuff, not just reading a headline off an article that we saw once shared by some random person on Facebook. Until we start doing that, the world is just going to keep walking all over you. The world is going to keep walking all over us, and they're not going to listen to anything we have to say, and we're giving up any influence or power that we might have to actually see real change. We're giving that up for our own ego, so we can feel better about ourselves because we know something that someone else doesn't. That's really what it's all about. All right, everybody. So let's keep this whole situation in prayer. I certainly will. Thank you so much for joining me on Into the Multiverse. Until next week, take care and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourself for one of the most shocking special offers in Skywatch TV history. We proudly announce the Shadowland Ultimate Collection. For your $35 donation during this very limited time offer, you'll receive the groundbreaking new book by Dr. Thomas Horn, Shadowland, that exposes the deep state actors at war with Christianity, Donald Trump, and America's destiny. The best-selling book by Pentagon analyst Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, Progressive Evil: How Radicals Are Redefining America's Rights, Making Her Globally Irrelevant for the End Times. Author Carl Gallup's brand new book, Masquerade, that explains the supernatural forces operating behind current global events. But this critical 3-volume collection also includes the original 5-part Skywatch Television Shadowland Investigative Series on DVD, absolutely free. Moreover, this incredible series contains the never-before-released on DVD, world-exclusive behind-the-scenes interview regarding perhaps the biggest scandal and cover-up in U.S. history. So hot, we're unable to discuss the specific contents on network television involving a 2-hour investigative interview with new forensic information connected to the Robert Mueller report that may soon send shockwaves through Washington, D.C. and around the world. But we're just getting started. The Shadowland Ultimate Collection also includes the brand new, never-before-released audio series by Dr. Thomas Horn himself, The Hidden Occultism of Epstein's Orgy Island. What demonic atrocities were going on at Epstein Island, and who were the high-powered individuals involved in some of the darkest occultic activities the world has ever witnessed. The contents of this mind-boggling 3-part exclusive audio series are far too sensitive for network broadcasting and are directly from the private vault of Dr. Thomas Horn, available nowhere else. But we're still not done. You'll also receive the Best of Defender Publishing ebook collection on data disc, featuring 70 of the most information-packed, best-selling books in Defender history. These full-length works are in popular ebook formats so you can read them on EPUB, PDF, Kindle, and other handheld electronic devices. Give this collection as the ultimate gift to somebody you know, or take them with you wherever you go. Valued at over $700 all by itself. This unprecedented collection sold separately holds a retail value of over $800. Yours now for only $35 plus shipping and handling. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime Skywatch TV exclusive offer, the Shadowland Ultimate Collection, available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order online or call 1-844-750-4985.